Hey there. So last week we covered basically that you have no reason not to make your cast of characters more diverse in your story. And this video is going to concern if you are putting in more diverse characters, how to do them well, how to give them kind of fair and good representation in your story. This is being, well, last week's video dealt mainly with race. This one will deal mainly with females, with feminine characters. And if your story passes these feminist tests, and of course, this doesn't have to just apply to female characters. It can apply to characters, to handicapped characters, to characters of color, to any sort of non-straight white male status that any of your characters have. But these were developed mainly by feminists to determine whether or not a movie is or can be said to be feminist. And of course, this is not the end-all be-all. A work can be feminist without passing any of these tests. It can be good without being feminist. But if you care about having a feminist story, a story that people can watch or read and think that represents them well if they are a woman, then you might care to know about these tests and then test your own work to see if they pass. So the first of these tests, and probably the most famous, the one that you've probably heard of before if you've heard of a feminist litmus test, is the Bechdel-Wallace test, named for Alison Bechdel, a comic book writer and now a MacArthur genius, so congrats to her, and her friend Liz Wallace, who she credits with inspiring her to make this test in her comic. This test is fairly straightforward. It's three steps to see if your work passes the Bechdel-Wallace test. The first is have two female characters, and these characters should have names. So let's say Alice and Shirley, right? Do Alice and Shirley, do your two female characters, have a conversation with each other. So talk to each other, any conversation. And then three, is their conversation about something other than a man? So two female characters with names talking to each other about something other than a man. Pretty simple, you would think, but so many of our most famous stories don't pass this test, do not fill these requirements. The original Star Wars trilogy does not pass this test. Lord of the Rings trilogy does not pass this test. And so many other stories do not pass this test. Either don't have more than one female character, or don't have those characters talk to each other, or if they do talk to each other, it's always about a male character in the story. So this is just something to keep an eye out for if you have a story with female characters. Or if you don't have a story with female characters, try adding a couple and then having them talk, maybe about the plot instead of about another character. The second test is a bit more extreme, a bit more complicated, and it is the sexy lamp test, which was invented by Kelly Sue DeConnick, another comic book writer. Yeah, that's pretty cool, two comic book writers. And this test basically asks, can you replace your female character with a lamp without changing the story, or without changing the plot of your story? So this basically asks, is your female character an agent in the story? Is she a subject? Does she do something? Or is she acted upon? Is she an object that is acted upon by the plot or by the male characters in your story? So if your female character is a trophy, if she is like a goal to be attained, if she is something to be won by the male character, then it fails this test. If she's a treasure, if she's something to be found, if it's a love story and you have the guy and he wants to find his true love and at the end of the movie he meets the girl, well then this doesn't pass the test. Are they a MacGuffin? Are they a plot device? Is she magic? Is she a princess and the male character has to protect her from an assassination attempt? Well then she could be replaced by a lamp and really that doesn't change the story much. Or is your female character fridged? And I'll explain what fridged means later on. But essentially, if your character can be replaced by an object, and you could just say, this object is magical, and that's why the male characters care about it, then you don't have a good female character, and you should probably work on that and make your character better make a better female character, which of course I'll cover too at the end of this video. So what is fridging, if you haven't already heard of fridging, or what it means to fridge a character? Well, fridging a character comes from this website called Women in Refrigerators, which was invented by Gail Simone, who's another female comic book writer, seeing a trend here. That's pretty cool. And I think it ties in pretty well with another kind of media trope called the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which was invented by a media critic named Nathan Rabin. Or Rabin? What is it? Nathan, I'm going to say Rabin, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And both of these tropes basically, or both of these basically ask is, does your female character exist only for your male character's development? So what fridging means is, does your female character die just to motivate a male character, or to establish that a character is evil? So one of the best fridgings, or one of the best known fridgings, I think, in comic books, even though it's not a death, it is very similar, is in The Killing Joke by Alan Moore, the Batman story, where Barbara Gordon gets paralyzed by the Joker, basically in order to motivate Batman and Jim Gordon, and also to establish that the Joker is a lunatic. The term is named for, again, I forget this female character's name, which is both inappropriate and appropriate, I think. But the Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, found his girlfriend in a refrigerator, dead in a refrigerator, killed by another villain, in order to establish that this villain was serious, and that provided motivation for the male character to seek vengeance for her. And then the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is related, but kind of the opposite. Is, does your female character exist only to fix or to fall in love with your male character? And this is seen in tons of movies, romantic comedies. This is... Actually, all the ones I can think of are kind of parodies of it. But I think the Nathan Rabin first came up with this idea after watching Garden State, Zach Braff, and I think Natalie Portman, I want to say. In a movie where it's usually rom-coms, and it's usually the man is depressed, he's lost in life, and he comes across this quirky woman, and this woman helps him realize that he can be happy and he should fall in love, and blah, 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 but the woman exists basically only to help the man discover this about himself and doesn't have a character of their own. These female characters exist in this art, in this movie, in this book, in this comic, in this whatever, only to establish the male character more. And it has a lot to do with the sexy lamp test. Can your character be replaced by an object? And you can just say, this magic is optical, this object is special, it's magical, or whatever. And then something happens to it, and your character is distraught, or your character learns something about themselves. And so how do you prevent this? How do you write a good female character? Not a strong female character, which is a term that is a little problematic. That's a little too broad, I think. Broad, because females. Anyway, so how do you make a female character that doesn't fall into any of these traps, that can't be replaced by an object, that doesn't exist only for the sake of a male character's development? And well, here's my little cheat sheet. There's one good rule for this, and that is to give your female character's motivation separate from your male character. And this is really the same sort of cheat. This is the same sort of advice that you give just to write a good character. All good characters should have motivations and should have their own motivations. And this goes for male characters, this goes for female characters, it goes for characters of color, it goes for heroes, villains, side characters. It doesn't matter. All good characters have strong motivations. And if you want your female character to avoid falling for any of those previous traps, what you do is you give them a motivation that isn't just the male character's motivation. So going back to the Bechdel test and applying this rule, if each of these female characters have their own motivations that doesn't have to do with the male character, then they can have a conversation about what they want to each other that doesn't mention the man. So let's say, what I name Alice here. So let's say Alice really wants to go to the movie, and Shirley really wants to, or let's say Alice wants to go to movie 1, and Shirley wants to go to movie 2, right? They can have a conversation about movies. That doesn't have to be about a man. They can say, I want to see this movie. No, I want to see this movie. And then they argue about the movies. It's simple as that. It doesn't have to be this huge, big want. It just has to be a unique want. Something that is unique to that character. Same thing goes for the sexy lamp test. If the female character has a motivation, then they have their own characters to develop, and they can't be replaced. A lamp, an object, cannot be motivated. And that's the difference between a subject and an object in a work, between an agent or a character and a MacGuffin. So if you have a female character who also wants something, let's say it's a love story, and the female character wants, again, something separate from the male, so it doesn't want to fall in love with the male, but the female, like the male wants, they both want to, let's say, get a promotion at work, right? Something pretty simple. The male character could want a promotion at work and think, wow, if I get this promotion, then she'll fall in love with me because it shows that I'm resourceful and smart and intelligent. And the woman could want the promotion at her own job, right? Because, she wants to be self-sufficient or something, and then she's not a trophy. Then the male still wants her, and the male still thinks, oh, I can deserve her, but the woman has her own agency. The woman can decide on her own whether or not she still wants the man, depending on how the story goes. And that goes for all of this. If an object wants something, it no longer is an object. It becomes a character. And then, of course, just going back to the woman in the refrigerator, and the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, if the female character wants something, then she has reasons to develop her own. Then her character development is not intrinsically tied to the man. You can kill a female character. I'm not saying never kill your female characters. But if you have a female character that wants something, right? Let's say you have a female adventurer, and she really wants to discover gold, right? She wants to discover this lost treasure. And you also have a male character who wants to discover this treasure. And they're both racing for this treasure. And then there's a villain, and the villain kills the female character, right? Well, then it's a tragedy. It's not a tragedy for the male because they were having different stories. It's a tragedy because the female character doesn't get what she wants. And that's, again, very simplistic, and there are better examples, but I'm doing this off the top of my head here. But essentially, to make a good character, and this, again, goes for any character, you just need to motivate them. And it's really as simple as that, is make a female character, and then think, what do they want that isn't the male character in this movie? What do they want if they never come across the male character? If the story was about them, and you don't have to do this for every character, of course. If you just have a side character, if you have a janitor sweeping a floor, then you don't have to think, well, if this story was about the janitor, what would happen? You just think, well, what does this character want in this moment? If you have a female janitor character, she wants to do her job. She wants to clean the floors, and that has nothing to do with any male characters in your movie. That gives her something to do, though, and that makes her not just an object. That means if they have a conversation, they have something to contribute instead of just saying, oh, wow, man character, you're so handsome, you're so awesome, I hope you do good, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, just something to be aware of. When making a character, female character, any character, give them a motivation. And if you're telling a story, or if you've already written a story and you want to make sure that it is feminist, that it does portray people equally. And of course, this also applies to characters of color, of different sexual orientations, handicapped or not handicapped, what have you. Try applying these tests. Do I have 2 handicapped characters? Do I have 2 characters of color talk to each other about a character who isn't white? Do I have 2 handicapped characters talk to each other about a character who is not disabled? Can I replace any of those characters with like a magical object? And does that change the story at all? And just make sure when writing a story, when telling a story, and I don't know why I closed the book there, that, yeah, your characters have motivations, that they want something separate from your other characters, and then you should be pretty safe. That should keep you out of all of these pitfalls. And there we go. That is that, essentially, said in 14 minutes. So I hope this helped you. I hope you take that advice into consideration if you care about making a fair story. And of course, again, this is not the end-all be-all. There are tons of other litmus tests you can find on the internet, I'm sure. And you are the only one who knows how to tell your story. So if you disagree with all of this, if you are telling a story and you know how it's told and you think this would get in the way, I mean, consider it. But if you're that gung-ho about it and you think any of that would ruin your story, then tell your story how you want to tell it. And a story doesn't have to, again, a story doesn't have to abide by any of these tests to be feminist. You can tell a feminist story with only one female character. You can tell a feminist story, and it's hard to tell a feminist story if the female character is an object. But you can have a feminist story where the female character dies. You can have a feminist love story. Again, the only thing you really have to consider is that the female character wants something of their own. And that is, I think, the biggest pitfall that stories that do fall into these traps have. And that's that. So, again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If there are any other topics you want me to cover on this channel, please leave them in the comments. Or if you have any thoughts whatsoever, if you agree, if you disagree, if you know of any other interesting tests that you could apply to movies, television, books, whatever, leave them down below, and I'd be really glad to read those. And if you feel like it, subscribe, because that makes me happy. And then you get to know about these videos faster than everybody else, I think. Whatever. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you'll continue to watch my videos, reviews, whatever. And just, yeah, we can do that and that stuff. So again, yes, thank you for watching, and yeah, any comments, questions, just leave them. I'm bad at ending things. I'm bad at saying goodbye.